It didn't begin with a rocket launch. It didn't begin with the moon. It began with a sound, a cold mechanical pulse echoing through the silence of space. In October of 1957, that sound circled the Earth every 90 minutes, invisible to the human eye but impossible to ignore. It came from a small Soviet satellite called Sputnik, a polished sphere no larger than a beach ball, drifting above the atmosphere while transmitting a simple signal, beep, beep, beep. To some, it was a scientific achievement, but to millions of Americans, it felt like something far more unsettling. It felt like a warning, because for the first time in history, the sky was no longer unreachable. It was no longer safe, and whatever could reach space could also reach anywhere on Earth. In the United States, the reaction was immediate and visceral. Newspapers exploded with headlines. Politicians demanded answers. Ordinary citizens stepped outside at night, staring up at the darkness, wondering where exactly that small machine was and what it meant. The Cold War had already divided the world into two opposing ideologies, but now the battlefield had expanded beyond land, beyond oceans, into the cosmos itself. The Soviet Union had taken the lead, and America was caught off guard. Fear spread quickly, but it did not remain fear for long. Something else began to take hold, something deeper, more powerful: fascination, obsession, the idea that humanity could break free from Earth, that machines could orbit the planet, that one day a person might stand among the stars. It ignited something primal. The unknown was no longer distant. It was suddenly within reach. The space race had begun, and it would become one of the most intense and transformative competitions in human history. Behind the scenes, the stakes were far higher than the public fully understood. This was not just about exploration or discovery. It was about dominance. If one nation could control space, it could control communication, surveillance, and potentially even warfare on a scale never seen before. Rockets designed to carry satellites could just as easily carry nuclear warheads across continents. The line between scientific progress and military power was dangerously thin, and both sides knew it. In the years that followed, the Soviet Union continued to push forward with a series of historic firsts. They sent the first living creature into orbit. Then, in 1961, they achieved something that seemed almost unimaginable. They sent the first human into space. Yuri Gagarin's flight lasted just 108 minutes, but its impact was immeasurable. As he orbited the Earth, he became a global symbol of possibility, and at the same time, a stark reminder to the United States that they were still behind. For Americans, this was more than a technological gap. It was a psychological one. The nation that had emerged from World War II as a symbol of power and innovation now found itself chasing its rival into the future. There was a growing fear that if the Soviet Union continued to lead, it would not only dominate space, but define the direction of human progress itself. And so, the United States responded with urgency and ambition. In 1958, NASA was created, not just as an agency, but as a declaration. Billions of dollars were invested, the brightest minds were recruited, entire industries were reshaped. Schools began emphasizing science and mathematics like never before, preparing a new generation for a world that would no longer be confined to Earth. The space race was no longer just a government effort, it became a national mission. But progress did not come easily. Rockets exploded on launch pads, missions failed, lives were lost. Each attempt carried immense risk, and the margin for error was almost non-existent. Yet, despite the failures, the momentum never stopped. With each test, each launch, each breakthrough, the United States moved closer to something extraordinary. At the same time, something remarkable was happening within American society. Space had become more than a scientific endeavor. It had become a cultural phenomenon. Families gathered around televisions to watch launches in real time, holding their breath as rockets roared into the sky. Children dreamed not of ordinary careers, but of becoming astronauts, explorers of the unknown. Scientists and engineers, once working quietly behind the scenes, were now celebrated as national heroes. The fascination with space was everywhere. It influenced movies, books, education, and even the way people thought about the future. For the first time, humanity wasn't just imagining life beyond Earth. It was actively working toward it. But not everyone saw it the same way. As billions were poured into the space race, critics began to question the cost. Why invest so much into reaching the moon when there were pressing issues on Earth? Poverty, inequality, and social unrest were growing concerns, particularly in the United States during the 1960s. To some, the space race represented hope and progress. To others, it felt like a distraction or even an excess. Still, the race continued. And then, in 1969, the world reached a moment that would define an era. After more than a decade of competition, innovation, and relentless effort, the United States launched Apollo 11. The mission was simple in its objective, yet monumental in its implications: land a human on the moon and bring them back safely. As the rocket lifted off, millions watched. As it traveled through space, millions waited. And when the lunar module finally touched down on the moon's surface, the world fell silent. Then came the words. A single step, taken by a human being on a celestial body that had once seemed forever out of reach. Nearly 750 million people watched that moment unfold. Across continents, across cultures, across political divides, humanity shared the same experience. For a brief moment, the divisions of the Cold War faded into the background, replaced by something far more profound: a realization. We had left our planet. From the surface of the moon, Earth appeared small, fragile, suspended in the vast darkness of space. It was a perspective no one had ever truly experienced before. Borders disappeared. Differences seemed insignificant. The idea of humanity as a single entity, sharing one world, became impossible to ignore. In the United States, the moon landing was celebrated as a victory, a triumph of determination, innovation, and national pride. It proved that the country could not only compete, but lead. It marked the moment when America had effectively won the space race, but the impact extended far beyond politics. The technologies developed during the space race began to shape everyday life. Advances in computing, communication, and material science found their way into homes, businesses, and industries. Satellites transform the way we connect, navigate, and understand our world. The rapid pace of innovation set during those years created a foundation for the modern technological era. Even so, the race itself began to slow. Once the primary objective had been achieved, the urgency faded. The intense rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union in space gradually gave way to a more collaborative approach. What had once been a battlefield became, over time, a place of cooperation. But the legacy of the space race never disappeared. It changed the rules of what humanity believed was possible. It proved that with enough determination, resources, and vision, even the most impossible goals could be achieved. It redefined exploration, not as something limited to Earth, but as something that extended far beyond it. And perhaps most importantly, it changed how we see ourselves. Before the space race, humanity was bound to the planet by both limitation and imagination. After it, we understood that Earth was not the boundary, it was the beginning. Today, as rockets once again rise into the sky, as missions are planned for Mars, And as private companies enter the new era of space exploration, the echoes of that original race can still be felt. Every launch carries with it the same sense of wonder, the same ambition, the same question that first emerged when Sputnik's signal echoed through the night. What lies beyond? The space race did not just take us to the moon. It changed the trajectory of our species. It transformed fear into curiosity, rivalry into progress, and imagination into reality. And in doing so, it left behind something far greater than footprints on the lunar surface. It left behind a new understanding of what it means to be human, in a universe that suddenly feels much closer than it ever did before.